Okay, thank you, everybody. You found your way into yet another University Lowbrow Astronomers meeting, this being the March 2022 edition. And see, Jack is fascinated with the cameras. Anyway,
Raise the volume, please.
pardon?
Hey,
Raise the volume,
Oh,
please.
that's true. I forgot I was on this mic. Okay, sorry about that. So anyway, hopefully this meeting will go a little better than what our second attempt was, because we've set it up more like we did that first one. Plus, I think we've embellished it just a little bit too. So far, so good. Anyway, also keep in mind that we're recording and going to upload that to YouTube sometime tomorrow. So just so you're aware of it. And I really like it when our members, our guest speakers, our own club members. It makes intros a lot easier for one thing, because we all know Adrian Bradley. Did I say that right? Yeah. Vice President Adrian Bradley, who's not only vice president for this club, but is now treasurer, I believe, for Black, treasurer for the Wayne Club. And he's just very, very involved in a lot of different things. As you know, he's also dabbled a lot into astrophotography. Dabbled's not quite the right word. He's very good at it. But he's also, you might have noticed, sort of gone into a lot of nature shots and things besides just looking at the night sky. He's added, as he was saying earlier, planet Earth to it. So like I told him, well, you're really a planetary scientist in a sense, because this is planet too. So anyway, with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring up our own VP, Adrian Bradley.
all right. Please hold the applause till the end. No, not you, Jeff. One, that's after you see his presentation, I'll sound the gong for you all to wake up. So as Charlie says, name is Adrian. It's the Warren Astronomical Society. I got suckered into doing that somehow. Was president of GLAC and handed it promptly to John Wallbank in time for him to deal with the in-person astronomy at the beach. While I presided, we did the 2 virtual events thanks to the pandemic. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully we won't have a spike or new variant take off for us, so we can eventually get back together, but we want to be safe. So let's hope that works. And I am going to share the screen and begin. Let's see, well, I had it going. I need to do that. Then do that. Let's do
It was
that. Okay. So I think you all have a wonder if I can. Okay, there we go. So this is my opening slide. The pictures of the sky, travelogue of the night sky, and the image pictured is one of the favorite places that I like to go to take images in Point O'Bark Lighthouse Park. I have a whole presentation about why I choose that location. It sits in a border zone that's just darker than the rest of the thumb, and the sky has really good contrast there. Of course, you can go above the UP and see a Bortle 2 site. You can go to Oklahoma and out west, Arizona, or even Nebraska and see a Bortle 1 site. So I have Royal Astronomical Society of Canada in there because I recently was awarded a RASC Astroimager certificate. I had to submit 12 images, and they awarded me a RASC Wide Field Astroimager, which means I can now submit publications. I think the only other thing they told me is I have to go to Canada and image things in Canada. So I'm working on my passport. All right, let's see if this will work now. Of course it doesn't work.
I think you have to point at the overhead.
Nah, I was pointing every which way. And it was working before. Okay, now I think it'll go. Yeah, now it's going. All right, so I start the presentation by talking what's a nightscape. And lately we have a new term, landscape astrophotographer, where those that love to try and marry Earth's terrain and the night sky will call themselves landscape astrophotographers. For me, nightscaper is just a shorter term. It's what I prefer. I'd love to see the word nightscape in the dictionary. So I think it would be a similar, it'd have a similar meaning. So classic wide field means you point directly at the sky and you take down an image in a wide field view, whether you're capturing the, so if you're capturing the lunar eclipse with the Pleiades, the heart and the soul in the double cluster, my attempt at the North American and Satyr regions, with a planetary conjunction, comet, and a 2-minute image of Orion in NGC 1977. Charlie, you're going to remember that picture, or you might or might not. The Honorable Dr. David Levy paid us a visit. For those of us that know John Cosland, he was there too. And Dr. Levy had this simple but elegant picture. Those of you on Zoom may be able to see it. Those of you here in the room, that's the Southern Cross. And Dr. Levy was so enamored by the Southern Cross, he took a crude picture of it, and he was able to get the starlight from the Southern Cross. For some reason, that sparked my interest. You can actually pull down starlight with a DSLR camera. So from all the visual astronomers that we have here in the Lowbrows, taught me a lot about what's in the night sky. This slide shows a progression. I also do like birding, as we were talking about beforehand. And as you can see, over 6 months, there were 3 key pictures in trying to catch a tern, get close to the water to the point where I got it all the way down here. It took time to get to that point. And with my nightscapes, it's taken time to figure out how I want to present the nightscapes, and then using settings and equipment to get myself to the point where I'm presenting them in the way that I want people to see them. So the other thing I picked up doing nightscapes, because you can see in this image, it's cloudy. Most visual or DSLR or classic astrophotography, if you're trying to shoot the Orion Nebula, you're losing frames right now. But if you're doing a nightscape, you still have something you can present that you can take. You notice the starlight getting through those clouds. That's about a 30-minute exposure. And if you're patient and you wait a little bit, the sky might clear while you're there and you take another image. And if you're lucky, you get other phenomena such as this light pillar that across Lake Huron. It was cold that night. I want to say it was in the teens Fahrenheit and dropping when I took that image. So there were ice crystals, and that light pillar did show up for those who are looking over there. So I thought that was a pretty neat bonus. So doing landscape astrophotography, a lot like any form of astronomy, you're going to start small. You're going to start with what you've got, and then you're going to gradually increase equipment as you need it. I don't recommend you run out there and get the best of the best and still not be sure what you're doing with it. These images here were taken with I want to say a 30D was a 12 megapixel camera, and it was a kit lens, an 18 to 55 kit lens. What that means, not the optimal equipment to shoot with, but I've sold that print on the right, the setting moon with Earthshine. So It was a great camera to cut my teeth on. I was able to get the shape of the Milky Way in a rural area that used to be darker than it is now. It's gone down by at least one Bortle shade from maybe it was 4 or 5, now it's about 6. So up here, those of you that can see me in the room, or I'm showing you about the area where I shot this one with a modified Canon 6D and a 14mm f2.8 lens. The reason that gear is a little bit better is because I can have, now I've got something that'll pull in. The modification that was done was to take out a filter for the red part of the spectrum. And now you can see HA emissions, which come into space a lot, or come out of space. So there's the rosette, there's Lambda Orionis, and you know, when you're giving presentations, you should know these things. Barnard's Loop, and all the other nebulosity we see here on the side of I-75 with a bunch of trees. So you end up with a nice looking image, just based on the fact that you're using the trees as sort of your pointers to what's in the sky. And that's, more often than not, that's the way that I set my images up, is whatever's on Earth is sort of, it's there, and it's the frame for where the what I'm shooting in the night sky. So there's my equipment. Won't go through all of it. I actually, the Sony A7 III, nowadays I use a slightly different camera. It's an upgraded version, the A7R4. This bottom tracking system I've used to take some nightscapes, and then I ended up getting something a little more portable, which is that Move tracker. I did use the Skywatcher Star Adventurer when I was in Oklahoma with Jim, with Udon and some of the other lowbrows. I had a Star Adventurer that was slowly going out of commission, and the thing finally bit the dust, and so I got something different. So for those of you that might be out there now, Kurt Hilling showed us a beautiful Milky Way picture, if you remember, from Africa. So we know the Milky Way looks different in different areas, and you don't necessarily need a tracker. With some basic equipment, you do need a tripod. I recommend a tripod, but then you can take your DSLR camera, your wide angle fast lens, and you can get a nice Milky Way picture with round stars within 10 to 20 seconds, depending on how wide an angle the camera is. So you don't have to have a ton of equipment. It depends on what you're trying to do. If you're just capturing what's there, you can do it without the tracker. Once you start getting the tracker, and this may not be the best image, you can start tracking night sky, just like for those that do astrophotography, you know how important tracking is towards getting your data. You can start doing that, but on a wider angle. Much like some of the images that I showed earlier in the beginning of the presentation, the shot of the heart and the soul and the Orion Nebula, you start tracking, but then you have to do things like composites, which I have done. I had one that was hanging in Camera Mall in their gallery for a while, and it was a composite. It had the Milky Way for 2 minutes, and it had a long 2-minute untracked shot of the lake. I think it's in here, or at least one iteration of it is in the slideshow that I'm going to play later on. Now, here's an interesting thing. This is the first time I think I'm showing one of the images that I've shot fairly recently, and I shot it with 2 different cameras. You can see the specs, and on the screens in here, you may notice a bit of difference. You definitely notice that there's more red that camera soaks in because the filter's taken away. But at a Bortle 1 site, your overall image, your image quality may be fine with the with a stock camera. And we've got some noises, so I think we're gonna pause for a couple seconds. All right, so when you're in Bortle 1 skies, the light coming from the sky, the Milky Way, planets, everything else, there's so much more light coming in that it takes less tricks to pull this light down. I have some images that took 8 seconds to produce with a fast lens and my camera just sitting on a stationary tripod, and lots of detail. That was at Okitex. So here are places that I've been. We'll go through those. Most of you will see instantly the dippers. If I put this on social media or if I present to a library or other places, I'll challenge them to find the dippers and they'll hunt and search. This is, for those of you that have been to Lake Hudson, you'll say, yeah, that's about how it looks to the naked eye, is with all the stars. And you see all the stars intermingled with your main constellations. Those of you at Gladwin, Mike Radwick, you remember this. I don't know if Norb's joined us. This was another time when John Coslin was with us. I ran around with that 30D trying to get images. Gladwin was a nice Bortle 3, borderline Bortle 4 site, real dark to the north. I took several images. When I got home and looked at them on the computer, they were all donuts. I couldn't use any of them. I thought I had something when I looked at the back of the camera. And what I learned since then is look a little closer, make sure that you've got pinpoints and not donuts. Donuts are good to eat, but they're not good when they're in your image. And I didn't feel like figuring out what I could do to fix them. I just said, well, next time I go to Gladwin, I'll give it another try. So sometimes you don't get the images you want, but you learn from that as well as images that turned out well. And another thing I do is I mark my lenses that I use for these nightscapes. I mark the focus spot, and that way when I'm setting up, I can turn right to that focus spot, and my setup is rather quick and the stars are already reasonably sharp. And then if it's off by a little bit, I can change it. But so that was something I learned. Other thing I learned is you'll be surprised where you can get starlight from. This was the 6D before I'd modified it. So I took this wonderful dusk picture of the Golden Gate Bridge when I was out there, November 2019. And as I walked back, I aimed this thing up. I didn't have a tripod, so I set it down on the bridge. There was a walkway, and tried to hold it as steady as I could. And there's Cassiopeia, there's the double cluster, there's Perseus. Those of you looking over here, Cassiopeia, double cluster, Perseus. It's very shaky, but I was able to get starlight. So that taught me that as long as you've got your settings and there's reasonable darkness, you can pull starlight even in an urban area. Now on that bridge, there isn't as much light, of course, when you're on that part of the bridge. But experiments like that. So Ann Arbor, Michigan, you've got two sides, light polluted, but this time you do a little bit of processing and you can end up with a pretty nice image. That's Brower Nature Preserve. And that was a couple of years ago where I want to say this was fall leading into winter as the Milky Way starts to recede and you start to lose the bulge in the galactic center. Alcona County is one of my favorite places to go because it's a true Bortle 3 zone. This is a zone that Dr. Brian Autumn showed me to, and then I would go back on my own. The light pillars that you see over here, I submitted those photos for the Alcona County, their documentation, and they gladly used it. And they showed me their the changes that they made to the county Parks and Rec documentation now has my images in it. That was that's a beautiful place, and that's the Al Sabo River at moonrise right here. The plan is to go back and get the rising Milky Way from that area. So anywhere in the thumb is always a nice place to go. That's Point O'Bark Lighthouse at sunrise. I've got more images from that night. That was the solstice last year. And this year's, I should say equinox, not solstice. It's equinox when it's spring and fall, solstice when it's winter and summer. So spring equinox, that sun took all of about 5 seconds, I think, to go from barely being on the horizon to being up. Fastest sunrise you'll see. And there was aurora that night, right after the moon had set. This time the equinox is tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, there will be a moon rising, so there won't be as much time for a dark sky. And then there's Eagle Bay. Bortle 2 zones, at the time, that's the most of the Milky Way that I'd ever been able to see or image. That's a 1-minute image. And you could see the same thing at Tequamanen Falls, if only it wasn't cloudy every time I happened to go. And then the one time it wasn't cloudy, the night that I took that image, I was headed to Tequamanen Falls because it was clear. And I got there and the light turned on, astronomical twilight, astronomical dawn. The moment I got there to take the picture, there came you could sense the light changing. I took one picture and the Milky Way had already faded to very faint. I think that image is in there somewhere. I'll have to look for it. Conversely, Bortle 1 site, you say Bortle 2 and Bortle 1, there's a big difference as far as I'm concerned. So you're seeing astronomical twilight, dusk, I guess, going the other way. The sun has set, and it is set for basically 45 minutes. It's got a little more time before we're done with astronomical twilight. And that much Milky Way was visible, that much detail in a 30-second shot. And you're seeing, then the clouds came, because clouds are life, I guess. But you're seeing how bright that Milky Way is. It shines through the clouds. There's nothing lighting up the underside of the clouds because there's no light pollution. And the Milky Way takes on a whole different look when you're out there in the Bortle 1 sky. Most of you that have been able to experience it know all too well what that's like. So this slideshow is over. And I will go ahead and share this slide. It's another slideshow, but it's all the pictures that I've gathered from all these various sites. And I will go ahead and share that window. We'll let it play. Enjoy it. Hopefully you enjoy it. And let's hide the floating media controls. And here we go. pay grade. Sometimes you don't get what you're looking for.
That's right.
You haven't seen the zodiacal light, there it is. It's like that turn shot. It finally shows up. I was talking about it's prominent. That was an 8-second shot. That was also an 8-second shot. So that's the slideshow, and that also concludes my presentation. This is the question and answer part. If there are any questions. Are we still going or were we kicked off?
You're still going.
Okay.
Adrian, that was absolutely great.
So Adrian, could you talk a little bit about the trade-off between exposure time, ISO, and noise?
Yes, so exposure time, you have to expose long enough for the light to end up on your sensor and end up into the image. ISO and noise. The older cameras, the higher the ISO, the more grain luminance noise it's called that you get in your image. However, and Kurt, I know that you do know some things about it. The better exposed the better your exposure, the less luminance noise you end up with as a whole. In other words, you don't have as much to contend with, as opposed to if you try and leave your ISO down. If your ISO is lower, you have to expose for a lot longer, and that can produce some more problems if you're just trying to get a single shot. The sweet spot tends to be around 30 seconds, and between 20 and 30 seconds. The darker the location, I find the higher an ISO you can use without as much luminance noise. And there are tools such as Denoise AI that strip that out really well as some of the Adobe tools that help take some of the noise out of some of those later images there.
Adrian, on classic AP, we use flats and darks and biases to try to cancel out some of the noise that comes up. In landscape or nightscape photography, do you do any of that? Have you experimented with it?
The flats can also ruin the your actual landscape. Yeah, so it's a little tougher because your sky will end up looking beautiful. You'll get the sky, and it'll also take out some of the color of the sky as well. And so if you're trying to present what you're seeing or what your camera is seeing, that may interfere with that overall look. So it does depend on how much of the sky you have.
Does it matter what camera you use to get a shot on the Milky Way?
Once you get into a DSLR type camera with a sensor, APS-C or full frame, you can get some better images if you remember early on. Yeah, let me, if I can find it again. Okay. Older equipment, but still DSLR. You could even use their astronomical cameras. Now, you saw a picture in there somewhere where I used an iPhone to try and take a Milky Way picture. It was dark enough to get some detail, but the sensor, the lens, too small. And I might be able to show that on the screen, but the end result is that the picture doesn't have as much detail as a camera that's got a wider sensor. The megapixels don't matter as much. Most cameras are coming in at 20 to 24. That's plenty for, but you have to make sure everything's in focus. Focus is a little more important because all those megapixels amount to even trashier an image if it's not in focus. So you do have to have, you get to a certain level of camera, even if it's an older DSLR, you can still capture. You can capture starlight with an iPhone. And if you get a tracker and you put that on and you let it track the sky, it'll look better. But is it gonna, is it gonna get to this level? I don't know. Especially if you get the camera that I use, like I said, the camera that I use for this, there's a filter purposely pulled out to get more of the type of starlight. So it's more like an astronomy only, basically an astrophotography camera, like the ASI, the cameras that all the classic astrophotographers use that'll hook into the back of a telescope. This makes my DSLR a little closer to that because I can now get, I can get HA data, which you have to be somewhere dark to get that, and then you can see the difference. So that's a very good question. I spent a little time on that, but
Yeah, I'd like to add a couple of comments.
Sure.
For our trip to Africa, Kathy got a new mirrorless camera. And I'm comparing that with my, high-end Canon 5D Mark IV. And the noise level on hers is remarkably lower than on mine. Mine is about 4 years old and hers is new. And if you have a new mirrorless DSLR, you will be very surprised, pleasantly surprised, I think, at how much better the noise response is on it. And
So which
yeah,
one was it, Kurt? What mirrorless camera did you get?
the R6,
I've heard nothing but good things about the R6.
yeah,
That's I think that's a 24 megapixel camera, similar to that Sony A7 III.
yeah,
The shots that you saw of Orion and all the colors of the stars, but not so much HA data, that was a comparable camera to that. And Kurt, you are right. I think that's a sensor thing. The Sony sensors that are in those cameras are very similar to the sensors in the astrophotography dedicated cameras. They're Sony CMOS sensors.
and
So
one,
that-
yeah, I just want to say one other point on focusing. If you can do live focusing on Jupiter or Sirius or some other bright object, it really makes a big difference. I found that even a
Yes.
very tiny twitch of the focusing ring can make your star images noticeably fuzzy looking.
Or flat. You think
Or
that your
flat,
tracking isn't working, but you're just not in focus. You're absolutely right.
That's
I
it.
contended with that when I first shot with the mirrorless cameras. I'm like, is my tracking breaking? What's going on? And it turns out it wasn't in focus. So you're absolutely right. That's why I marked my lens, Kurt, so that I gave myself a place to start that was more in focus. And then I'll still point it at Jupiter or Sirius, whatever the bright object is that's up. And
Starting point though.
to get a good starting point. The other thing you can use is what's known as a Botanoff mask, which if Auni were here, you can 3D print them, you put them on your lens, and then you can see a pattern, and when the pattern is a certain way, then you know that you've got as tight a focus as you can get.
Mhm. The other gotcha about live focus that I keep forgetting is it always resets the shutter speed to a 30th of a second. So I always forget when I go back to manual that I have to switch it back to 10 seconds or whatever, because the first picture I take after live focus is always black.
Yeah, I never have that problem, and I just turned my mic on, so I should be a little clear.
Maybe it's a Canon thing.
It might be. My 6D, whenever I turn it on, it just recalls the last setting that I used.
Yeah.
So go ahead. You had another question.
This is a comment. When I took a picture of it came out like a metal like blobby hamburger. And
That can happen. So for that, it depends on how low Jupiter was to the horizon. You are shooting through. Jupiter is in the ecliptic, and for most things, they gotta be up 20 degrees, 30 degrees or higher to make them clear. So the technique that most planetary imagers use is they take a video of Jupiter, and it's a long-running video. Then they get a program like Registax to take that video and stack the best frames of the video. You do some processing to get Jupiter to not look like a mushy hamburger. So, or you just have to get really lucky with a clear, steady sky. So yeah, that's not a surprise that you can, because of how low Jupiter usually is, you're gonna get a hamburger time, but you can keep trying a number of exposures and see what you can get.
good to know.
All right, Jeff.
Since I take a lot of pictures near the lake, how much do you
I guess, get humidity issues when you're taking the night sky?
When it's 4 below, I don't get too many humidity issues at all. But during the summer, I get mosquito issues and I get huge bug. When I took that partial eclipse at the partial eclipse out at Point O'Bark Lighthouse, there were bugs this big, thousands of them flying around me. And the seagulls were doing nothing to help me. So I almost stopped birding that day. But that's more of an issue in the wide angle is it's the bugs more so than that thermal noise that you're talking about comes into play if I'm trying to do something longer. And now I don't have a cooled camera. So now I've got thermal noise in addition to some of the luminance noise. And that's when the humidity could play a role if I'm sitting by the lake. So yeah, there's that. Go ahead.
A lot of your pictures are just beautiful. I wanted to.
Thank you.
And you mentioned the iPhone. The iPhone can't compare with, the better pictures, but I do think it's amazing that a person with no skill can take this phone, take a 10-second exposure handheld, and see crisp stars. It takes all the motion out, and I'll see a couple magnitude fainter stars with my eye, which I think is amazing for a tiny little thing like that.
It is amazing. And I think what they did with their night mode was I think they're stacking.
Yeah.
Because, you can see the little crosshair, like,
Yeah.
Dr. Becky Smethers posted on Instagram. She had a pretty steady shot. She was in a pub and she decides, I'm going to get out here and I'm going to take a picture with her iPhone. And it turned out to be a decent picture, despite her not being very steady.
I think it's neat for someone with no skill to be able to take a picture of the night sky.
Yeah, now I do think Android is still a bit ahead of iPhone in being able to stack and create photos.
This is the latest Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra. And look at the camera array on this phone.
There's 5 of them. Yeah, for those of you on Zoom, there's a ton of, so if you're going to shoot with a smartphone, right now, I recommend sticking with the newer Samsung models. But if you're an iPhone user like me, we'll see what they do. That Apple is fully aware that they're being lapped by a couple of years. But the popularity of astrophotography is probably driving why they're content to do, well, you can still get the sky at least, but even in a Bortle 1 zone, it isn't as clear as it might be if I tried to shoot with Charlie Samsung.
The Android has I assume it has where you take a picture of a waterfall or a stream and it frees the background and allow the water to be blurred.
Yeah, it can do that. Even the old iPhone could do that too. Yeah, I think the 6. You have another question, so go ahead.
If you're taking a picture of the Milky Way under city line, does it affect it?
If there's city lights, you said? It does. It absolutely does. I actually have a presentation which I'll save in case we're running low on presenters, a Bortle zone from 7 shooting in Ann Arbor all the way down to shooting at Okie-Tex. I can actually, I'll pull because I have it here. That is and what I'll do is I'll quickly share.
Have to share, Adrian.
Okay. Well, you'll see it because you'll see it on the screen.
For the Zoom folks.
Yeah. So just really quick, if this will work. Okay, so in the room you're seeing a Bortle 7 zone. I'll go ahead and quickly share the yeah.
You're good.
So there you go. That's Bortle 7. You can barely see any kind of dust lanes or anything. we're just gonna skip all the way to Bortle 2, Naked Eye Milky Way. This is you stepping out of your vehicle at night and looking in the direction of the Milky Way. That's what you see. This is the failed attempt at getting the Milky Way because astronomical twilight started. And I took this photo. The Milky Way is right over here. Darker zones are where you see Milky Way, even though astronomical twilight is starting, because it's dark enough for that Milky Way to be visible, but it's fading. You're an hour and a half before the sun breaks the horizon, but you're 5 to 7 minutes away from losing the Milky Way entirely when astronomical twilight starts. And that's a 30, so compare this 30-second shot at Bortle 1 to the 60-second shot at Bortle 2. There is a difference. Bortle 2 to Bortle 1, it's like it is another level. So that's, in pictures, there's the answer to your question. That's how your Milky Way shots are affected by how dark it is. Now, you're in Ann Arbor, so if you go to here, this took a lot of processing to do. And then here's this is the summer Milky Way. This is with a camera. Seeing this, you barely see, it looks like a cloud. It's like a little thin cloud. You can see it, but you got to know where you're looking. So huge difference between that and even the dark sky park. Winter Milky Way shows up like this. Summer Milky Way shows up like this with a bunch of processing. But then reason why I like going to Point O'Bark Lighthouse, and I'm writing a book on it, is because a Bortle 3 Milky Way begins to show some character. And you start to see dust lanes in the Orion spur of Milky Way too. So I'm going to go ahead and stop share and check into the into this. Yeah. And Kareem from the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, he had to run, but next Tuesday we do the Explore Scientific Global Star Party, where I share a lot of these images to the growing worldwide audience. It's Tuesdays at explorescientific.com/live. There are classic astrophotographers, there are professional astronomers. You've got Dr. David Levy shows up every Tuesday, gives us poetry and an observing report. David Eicher, chief editor of Astronomy Magazine, is often on that presentation. Other professional or highly regarded amateur astronomers, the president, Scott Roberts, brings them all in. Then he'll bring in folks from the Southern Hemisphere. So you get to see things like the Tarantula Nebula, Tucanae 47 Tucanae, which is the third largest globular cluster next to what's probably a dwarf galaxy, Omega Centauri. And actually it's the second, 47 Tucanae is the second. M13 that we all know well is the third. So you get to see them. Sometimes they do it live, or they'll just share images from that they took in the past. And then here I am sharing my images on there as well. So it's quite an honor to be a part of that show. All right, any other questions from Zoom or, I'm rhyming, the room?
So Adrian, I have two items.
Yep.
First is, I want to compliment you on your compositional skills. Some of those compositions are just fantastic, and I would
Thank you, Doug.
I would love to to do some of those. Mine just tend to be a little bland, but you're pretty outstanding. The other thing is, I'm looking at some of those images from the Okie-Tex. I see
Yeah.
an awful lot of red light on the observing field. Is that like before it gets really dark, or is that like kind of the rule during the nights, or what am I looking
So-
at there?
There's a couple of things, and Jim, when you want to jump in, you can too. You're muted, Jim. Go ahead and go off mute. I'll let Jim answer part of that question because we were there together.
We got pretty upset with the bright red lights. A number of the astrophotographers seemed to think that it didn't matter. And this is, during the pandemic, and while these people were nice enough during the day, it didn't seem like they felt they needed to tone it down or anything else. Doug Bach was there, and Doug is as good an astrophotographer as there is in our club anyway. And he was shooting every night, all night, and not a stray light anywhere from Doug. And
Well, the reason for that is he's an experienced visual observer too, from way back.
Right.
So he's
And that's
sensitive
the-
to that.
well,
And
he is, not only is he sensitive, but he's not lazy. And that's my impression of a lot of astrophotographers when it comes to getting along with the rest of us, is they're just plain lazy. And they don't feel the need, as long as it's a red light, even though it casts shadows on the ground, they basically don't care. And that led some of us to look at the nearby state park.
Yeah.
Because there's a huge facility there that, that we could rent during that same week. And because it was empty the week last year's Okie-Tex, it's got a kitchen and meeting room and a few
And an area to ourselves. Because and
plus there were two separate areas where photographers could set up in one area and visual observers could set up in another. Nathan,
Just to add to that, I come from a visual background. I got Don standing in front of me, Charlie, and those in the room, and those of you, Doug. I learned from you all visual first, and then we take off with the astrophotography. So the respect for the visual astronomers isn't necessarily being taught. It's gear, it's red lights, and if you're troubleshooting, it's white lights. And the sole purpose of being at the event is morphing from enjoying and seeing with your eyes a Milky Way that appears in front of your eyes that you may not have normally, you don't normally see where you are, to, okay, it's getting dark, I'm gonna get this killer picture of something. That's where amateur astronomy has been going.
Did they hear me?
Don, go ahead, Don.
Can you hear me, Doug?
Switch on
I'm
it.
sorry?
We're gonna bring Don in. If this thing looks.
well, one thing about this past Okie-Tex is, we're in the middle of the pandemic and nobody wants to go over and talk to the people who are making life miserable for anybody else. And I can't blame the Star Party for not coming down on people, because there was some white light problems too.
I mean,
And
when I was there and pretty frustrated, I think Robert went over and talked to their neighbors directly to one side of us. But all night long, that trailer, they were going in and out of that door, that white light door in that trailer. Every half an hour, somebody was going in and out and not bothering to turn the light out on the trailer.
It just drove me nuts, you know?
And the Okie-Tech pictures I took, I hid behind a trailer and made sure I wasn't leaking any light. And when I went forward, a lot of the shots that I took were at dusk and the Milky Way was still visible. And I made sure to stay out of the way of those that are doing visual astronomy. And just being aware of your surroundings, it's just something that's, I think we just need to teach it a little more because the hobby has grown into a technology thing and the visual side of it is getting lost. It's
If we're ever done with COVID, I would expect Star Party officialdom, wherever we are, to tell these people they got to shape up. But I can't really, I'm not going to ask anybody to risk their health to deal with errant red light or white light because it's just not worth it to me or to, even though I've traveled 1,300 miles, for me to have somebody take that risk. And a lot of people running the Star Party are, not young. Let's put it that way.
right.
And I don't want them out there dealing with people that are just plain being yahoos. So, but
So Adrian, yeah, so I really didn't want that to turn into a really long discussion on this stuff, but it just looked like.
I don't have any
a lot.
problem ranting about light pollution at Star Party.
Yeah.
So.
And it's no problem, Doug. I mean, that's part of what those images are there. I mean, they take you to Okie-Tech.
Yeah.
I could have tried to do this fantastic Milky Way, 20 stacks of the sky, a few of a mountain, and it wouldn't look like your experience. Or I can take a good picture that puts you right at Camp Lowbrow looking out or right where I was standing. And those are the sort of images I want to take.
Well, an old visual dinosaur like me was a little alarmed at all the red in there, but anyway.
Now, and there is another, real quick, the HA camera pulls all that red in a lot quicker. There was an image I had of a non-modified camera. You didn't see as much, but it's there. It was there, and Jim attested to it, and so did Don. Don has another comment real quick. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that camera of his with the filter out of it showed the red up quite a bit. When he took a picture of my A-line camper, that one window just lit up red in his picture. But if you were standing outside looking at my camper, you didn't see any light visually, but it showed up.
It highlighted it, but it was there. You heard the testimony. You know that it really was there. It just may not have been as bright. I think someone's out in the door, but it's enough to bother a seasoned visual astronomer because it is there. So so both sides, that's a good point. So Charlie, I think it's about time to.
Yeah, there's no other burning questions here. Okay, so I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you need another hat?
Yes.
Club shirt? There we go. That was easy. Which
Need
type?
them all. I'll go with the hat, and I'll go with, I forgot, 7 and I forgot what my size was. I'll go with the
I
fitted one.
think Doug's going to explain how that works.
Yeah, I couldn't hear what you were saying about which kind or whatever.
So which kind of hats do we have? I'll go with a hat, but if we have a winter hat or.
No, we have no knit caps. We just have baseball caps. We have the low profile. It's soft. It's
Okay.
we call it floppy. It's not a floppy hat, but it is floppy. So there's that kind, and then we have two that are sort of like a fitted cap. They're they've got
I've got
elastic
that
band,
one
so there's-
already. It's been beat up.
Yeah.
Yours looks like it's brand new for the season. Yeah, mine's beat up. But you've got you know what? I'll go with the floppy cap. Why not?
Okay. All right.
I'll take the floppy cap.
It's a good cap. We have lots of those. I think I have one still here, so I can send that to you. And I've got your address as long as you haven't moved in the past couple of years.
No, probably gonna be there a couple of years more too, so.
All
All
right.
right, Charlie, I'm gonna turn
And
it over
we,
to you.
we
Thank
do-
you all. I appreciate it. Got more shooting to do for the summer.
Excellent, excellent work, Adrian. We appreciate it. Okay. So I just have a couple of things. One is to remind everybody that elections are coming again. Seems like they come around faster every year. It's the price you pay for getting older, I guess, because I don't think time's accelerating. Just seems that way. And just so everybody knows, nominations are technically open right now. The elections will be, of course, our next meeting. And nominations will be open all the way up until just before we actually take the vote. And we do have 2 vice presidents that sound like that they are probably not going to run again this time. So just put the word out there, we're probably looking for 2 vice presidents. So if we don't find them, I'll come looking for you. Anyway, and I'll send a notice out about this in email also.
Charlie, who's
I'm-
retiring?
It looks like Liz and Dave Jorgensen.
Ah,
In
And-
the case of, pardon?
And Joy.
And Joy? Oh, Joy. I didn't see-
Yes.
when did you come in?
oh, no.
I was late. Like-
Okay, I didn't see you sneak in there.
Yeah, my school duties prevent me from being too active right now, but maybe in the future.
Wow.
So 3.
Okay. Got it. So temporarily, Joy is also going, so that makes 3 vice presidents. We got some work to do. Yeah. So this is no time for me to step down as president too and really rain chaos upon. Anyway. So we'll be working on that. And also, I'm going to send out an email regarding doing open houses again. We're thinking that that time is probably coming up fairly soon. Well, maybe hopefully even next month, perhaps. However, there is the question of how much help would we have if we did an open house? Everybody has various concerns safety wise. Yeah, go ahead, Don.
I might. Member.
We can't hear him.
I might suggest we open up Peach Mountain for a member night before we do an open house. I think there's lots of new members who have been dying to get out. And I think we could have a really big turnout and we could get our feet wet by having members there before we do a public open house.
Actually, I think that's a great idea. I saw a nod from Jack, our observatory director, so that probably is the way we're going to proceed. When I think about that's what we were talking about before when we thought we might be able to do this too, and then Omicron came along. So, but anyway, I'm going to send an email out to see how many people we would have that could help out when we go to the public ones at least. But the other part of it is what people are going to feel comfortable with showing up there as far as masking, whether you're vaccinated or not, that kind of thing. So there's really 2 questions there. What are the members comfortable with? And then I suppose the second one, when we start doing public ones, what are you comfortable with as far as the COVID situation? So anyway.
All right, this mic works now.
Yeah, you just reached in and clicked the switch.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So that's all I had. So since Joy joined us, do you have any last reports you'd like to give us, Joy?
Just been updating the websites with whether or not we're live or hybrid or what's going on.
And much appreciated too. So thank you. Adrian.
Well, I could think of some things,
Mike.
but yeah, I'm actually talking to Mike. Nothing else to report lowbrow wise. A lot of, you can see real busy with all clubs. Working on a presentation, a couple of others that I can give, and especially on the book that I'm writing. So if we need to fill in some presentations, I've got some stuff that I can use.
Actually, I think you're up next month again.
We'll put the we'll put more information about the book in that next one.
Cool. Okay,
So that's it. Yeah.
all right. Thank you. Amy?
Yeah, howdy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, nothing much to report other than I wanted to mention that I'm working with another member to possibly put together a PDF, color PDF at the end of the year of all the astrophotography that's submitted to the newsletter. And we're working on coming up with some themes for each month so that we can get even more submissions. So more on that later, but I thought I'd just mention it at this meeting. That's it.
Amy,
Yeah,
when would that come out? Our typical year runs April through March, so.
oh, that's a
uh,
good question. We were thinking of doing it January to December and then putting it out in February, but maybe it should run more along the lines of our our year, our
Basically,
particular,
it's the fiscal year, I guess.
fiscal
yeah,
year. if you
well,
wanna
we
look at it.
follow the university's academic year, basically, but.
Okay, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, we can talk about, I'll chat with Jack about that. Yeah, and I suppose also in case there are, other people who step into the newsletter role, it might be good to be on that cycle as well. I hadn't really thought of that.
Amy, you are the de facto newsletter editor going forward, just like Charlie's the de facto president. We'll never let you go now. You're doing
Okay,
too good of a job.
okay. But that's it for me.
Okay. Thank you, Amy. And since Jack has the microphone in his hand,
Okay, as far as the observatory's going, I was out there again just a few days ago, just
if you turn around, they can see you.
oh, okay, okay. Yes, as a few days
I know it's
ago,
disorienting, isn't it?
yeah. We did just some more maintenance around there, checking out the telescope and things like that, but we've all had this discussion for open houses. And I think, it's a good idea having the member open house. We could start it off with that. And that's all I have to really say, other than I'll be submitting in my request to run as observatory director next year. So other than that, that's all I have to say.
I think Jack's another one of those guys that's stuck with it forever. So, okay, thank you, Jack. And I'll tell you what, why don't you walk it down to Jeff?
I have a microphone built in here.
Ooh, this might track you.
Oh, yeah, he can just turn his on.
Yeah.
He's good.
Um,
Yep.
You might get a wave. Yeah.
a little bit. We had our communications meeting back in February, which I think we,
It is echoing.
yeah,
You want to turn yours off, use this?
yeah, why don't we? We had a communications meeting in February. We decided to go with the WordPress product, and I did look into the U of M entry, which is supposedly free, but as it turns out, it's free if they think you follow the university's mission, blah, 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 and they may charge you. So I put the request on hold, and we're going to search around for what hosting and other things might cost us to do. It's really not that bad. So I just got to gather the options together, and we can decide on that as a board. I believe we had 31 attendees here between live and hybrid, which is a pretty good hybrid meeting. What else? I did give a presentation last night to the U of M Amateur Radio Club. It was not well attended because it was their last meeting of the season, and it wasn't on anything having to do with radio astronomy or radio amateur radio stuff. But they did enjoy it. They learned a lot, and it turns out there's a couple of closet astrophotographers in their bunch, and they were kind of interested. So we may hear from them some more. I think that's all I got. If we need to, I'm going to be putting that presentation online and I can make the link available via our YouTube page and I'll email it out to the club. It's basically an overview of astronomy and astrophotography in general. It was kind of a nice broad overview for everything. So they seemed to like it and understood it at least.
Thank you, Jeff.
That reminded me of a couple of things. So I do have a couple of presentations coming up. One for the Detroit Public Library, although that was kind of through the was. Wednesday, I'm also going to be on a radio show. I wish I had more information about the show we're recording it from 5:30 to 8:30. So I've got those presentations coming, and then I think that's it for the circuit until something else comes along. But I had a presentation for different group Tuesday, Ann Arbor Camera Club. I did a presentation like this online Tuesday. So the presentation circuit was this week and next week. So a lot of outreach. And we do have John Wallbank, myself, Jeff, that are on GLAC. Would this be a good time to have maybe John chime in with GLAC news?
John?
So John.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we are planning a live in-person event, a traditional astronomy at the beach on September 16th and 17th, Friday and Saturday, 16th and 17th. We have what I feel is an outstanding board of officers and directors, a planning committee. We're very active. We're organizing speakers. We are planning on having an event tent there, and we are discussing the participation of the member groups of GLAC. We are going to ask each member group to have presence there in terms of a presentation or an offering of some kind for the public. We haven't decided whether we're going to have tent facilities provided or whether we're going to ask the individual groups to bring their own canopy. We are working out a safety system for the event and a system for storing large equipment with security. And we are going to ask each one of the clubs to make a contribution, of course, as we have in the past, because we will have this year. We will have, if we do have the live on the ground event, we will have expenses. So that's kind of where we stand, and we are fairly firm about going ahead with the in-person event unless there is some, extraordinary catastrophic intervening event, which means we have another wave of COVID or another wave of a new variant. That's about it. Jeff, do you have anything to add to that?
Not really.
Yeah, all of our funds have been transferred from WAS to our own GLAC account. So we'll go over the particulars, but we're over $3,000 or so of funds to start with in the GLAC. And so now now it's up to us from there to get our own funding now.
Yeah, and the thing is, we will probably, if we are able to go through the in-person event, we very likely will spend a good portion of that treasury. So I really want to keep the treasury robust, so the group that takes over next year, if it's not the same people, is not burdened with an immediate need to do some fundraising. We want to pass on a healthy treasury, because basically, if you don't have that, it really disturbs the ability to do any planning.
Well, I'm glad I didn't pull out that $1,000 I was going to pull out when I put the money in.
Oh, that's okay, Adrian. Yeah.
I feel better about that decision.
Treasurer Doug, have we kept up with our contributions to GLAC during the pandemic?
No, because there was nothing asked for, so we have not.
Because my feeling is that we're still collecting dues. And
Yes.
And I think we should kick in for those 2 years and for this one as well.
Yeah, if the rest of the club, it takes a vote, because we have been doing $400 a year. And we just haven't done it the past couple of years because there were no speakers, and we talked about it. There were discussions and there was no,
Right.
the consensus was there was really no expenses, so we didn't pay.
Yeah,
Well,
and the
the-
GLAC
the-
president, and the GLAC president at the time didn't come after you for the money because we were,
That was nice of them.
yeah, we were figuring we were just doing an online event, so we
Well,
didn't,
I was
we
a-
didn't look at it as a due situation, but.
I was a
and-
vice president and I was supposed to do the fundraising, but no, we did manage. There were some expenses, of course, for things like Zoom channels and YouTube and so forth, and incorporation and other things. But they were handled through the existing treasury and through donations. And
Yeah.
I think it's only orderly if GLAC presents a request for funding at a future meeting. So we will do that formally. I'll get that information to
Okay.
Charlie.
Okay.
Okay.
And to what Jim just said, if we think, 400 was what we've been doing for several years, and, except for the last couple, if we want to go up to 500, 600, 800, whatever, whatever is right, we can do. We're flush with cash. You'll find out when I talk.
And actually, if
Thank you.
you're done, Adrian, it's your turn anyway, Doug.
Okay. So speaking of flush with cash, we have $12,398 and some change. Got 177 memberships. One dropped, one we picked up a new one. So I think that's the same number from last time. And okay, make sure everybody's sitting down. We got an invoice from Rask, and I paid it. So we actually got the bill and I sent it in, and it hasn't cleared yet. That was a couple weeks ago. So hopefully it's not
So-
stuck in the mail in customs or something. I don't know, but
Yeah, so
anyway.
I can speak a little bit to that. I know Rask has been changing over a lot of
Oh my
personnel.
gosh.
Um,
Well,
so
for a year.
yeah, it has been, and they're aware of it. Other clubs
Yes.
are aware of that as well. So we'll have to investigate a little further. I know Kareem is probably more in touch. He's head of the Montreal Rask. I forget the center. I'm in the Sarnia Center, but I know Jack, you were in one of them. But yeah, we'll have to figure out what the national or the national board is doing there and see if we can get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. So anyway, we're all caught up with 2021 and the 2022 publication orders, and Liz, can't thank Liz enough. I don't think she's tuned in today, but can't thank her enough for getting those things distributed to everybody. That was a pain in the butt for her, and but she did it well, and I don't think she's really wanting to do that next year. So which sort of leads me to one more thing. So Charlie, you mentioned elections, and I've mentioned in the last meeting, I think, or so, I'd be willing to give up the job if you thought it was appropriate. I'm just want to make sure everyone knows I'm super happy doing it. I love doing it. It's been working great remotely and all that, with the exception of the Rask stuff was kind of a fiasco, really. But we got through it and people got their stuff. I think I've done a pretty good job. But if the club decides that it's better to have someone in person, we're starting to have hybrid meetings, and if it's better to have someone there at the meetings to collect money and whatever, and then I will gladly give up well, not gladly, reluctantly, but I'll give up the job. And it's also the Rask thing, getting those publications distributed. I don't know, time will tell if they get their act together by next year. Hard to say, because got a lot of apologies, but even as recent as this month, I didn't get that invoice until the first week in March. So do we even order? That's just another question. The history behind the ordering the calendars and things is it was a fundraiser for the club way back 15 years ago. We would order 80, 70, 80 calendars. and we'd make a little profit on each one. And, you know, we're just not doing that now. We're basically breaking even, and we're doing it as a service to the club members to get those items at a much lower price than what they would pay by ordering them from Rask themselves. In fact, they priced things intentionally lower this year for US clubs, especially like the handbooks, to make it more attractive for people, because they understand that it's really expensive to order one at a time, or one calendar or one handbook. So anyway, for those reasons, you know, I certainly would understand if people want to get a different treasurer that can be there, someone that can commit to being at the meetings, you know, on a regular basis. Otherwise, it defeats the purpose to be there to collect dues at a meeting. And but like I said, I'm happy to continue doing. So what I'm trying to say is, I would like to continue to be the treasurer, but if I'll understand if it's better to have someone that can be more local, because I'm in Florida now, but I'll be in Traverse City, and I just won't be able to make meetings. I mean, I can't say never, but not often.
I think if you're willing to keep doing it, that the club ought to be able to work out some of the in-person stuff among the vice presidents, like collecting dues in person and distributing the various materials. I don't think that's a real problem. You know, the big thing about it is keeping track of the money, and you keep track of the money really well, and notifying the members when it's time to pony up on their anniversary dates, and all that kind of stuff has been, you know, you've streamlined that quite well, and I'm happy to let you keep doing it.
Okay, well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
I think I've done a decent job. I haven't buggered it up too bad.
And you still got the Aruba slush fund, right?
You know, you can't say stuff like that, because that could get a person in trouble.
That's actually a joke from about 20 years ago. We used to have this thing about the Aruba slush fund. So
Yeah,
Oh,
there was almost no money in the treasury, but that's why it was
Yeah.
funny.
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
with the current treasurer, you could actually go and have a nice vacation.
you know, you
That's
could, you
true.
know, for
I can pause the recording if
$12,000,
you'd like.
yeah. You
I
can
can
do a lot of
pause the
things with
recording
that
if you'd
much
like
money.
to talk.
And I do agree with Jim. We can figure out some of these logistics things. I mean, if it comes down to it, we need somebody to distribute the publication stuff. If somebody else doesn't want to do it, I'll do it. So, you know, we'll figure it out. Oh, I
Yeah.
just volunteered, didn't I?
No, I don't
But
think you
there's-
have to volunteer, Charlie. There's plenty of people in
Yeah,
this
there's so
club
much
who,
stuff you,
Well, hey, no, I mean, if it comes down to it, I don't have any problem doing it. So
Yeah.
at least that's
but
easy
Liz
to
did a
say
good
now,
job,
but-
and
yeah.
but it was not an easy job.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Okay. I think Jack has one more thing.
One more quick one for everybody that's here. Still
Ruby
got the
lith.
original Red ruby lith sheeting, so if anybody wants to use it, you can use it for your flashlights.
Can you reach up in front of the camera with it? You could turn the whole thing red.
Oh.
Red filter us.
I can't do that right. But, and by the way, these are still at the pre-inflation price of $1.
Woo!
So come and get them.
Of course, for the Zoom audience, that might be a little difficult to do
Yes,
at the
that's
moment,
true.
but
It's very hard to do,
yeah,
but, you know,
yeah,
We can arrange PayPal.
yeah, yeah.
Cash App.
Well, does anybody have anything else?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to the idea of a member night. I think we should discuss it somewhat and come up with some proposals on how we'd like it to work and circulate that around the club so that we'd get an actual idea of, you know, how comfortable people would be being around each other, given that COVID is still out there and a lot of us are not young and definitely have comorbidities, as our melon-headed CDC director mentioned the other day. And that there is a risk to being around one another, and that we need to define how we manage those risks for everyone who might show up. For me, vaccinations, masks, and distancing would work pretty well. I think we could do that out of Peach Mountain with the members without a problem. But
Jim, I have a question. I know there have been some recent changes in the university's guidance on events. Does anyone know what the current university guidance for us would be?
Well, basically, I don't think the university's requiring masks outside. They're letting people go maskless at athletic events. But they do want you to apply through some office that they've got. They do want to know what people are doing. But I don't know how that would work for us, and I don't know whether we should do it through one of our partners up there, like the engineering college or the environmental and sustainability people. Those are things I just don't have any idea of.
According to the university policy that came out last week, basically outdoor events are not required to do any masking, distancing. Athletic events are, I think they've kind of given up on it. The only time they really are asking for masking is indoors in classrooms. Even in hallways and common areas, they don't have any problem with people doing that. There's no more responsible requirement unless you're in a classroom. Classrooms are basically closed in, highly dense areas, and that's where they're kind of concentrating things on. But I think the Peach Mountain thing being outdoors, it would probably be, I would have to guess it would be in our hands because the university has no restrictions for outdoor stuff now. That's my take of what the official documents. I did send that out to the officers. If you read through all the attachments and other junk that they had in there, that's kind of what it amounts to, as best as I can tell.
I agree with that. I think the only question I have is whether we have to, file paperwork with them to do this. But there is the question of what we as individuals and as a group are comfortable doing. And if we have some sort of code of conduct for the members, I think it should work out pretty well. People know that they have to approach masked, or, if they want to look through somebody's scope, that they have to ask about it before they get too close. I mean, things like that are, would be good manners anyway, that we simply reinforce that and make it another one of the things you're supposed to know if you come out to Peach Mountain, just like red lights and not running around and not making a lot of noise and the usual things that we ask people not to do up there.
Which is a terribly bad idea to start with, regardless of whether it's COVID there or not.
I didn't hear that.
It's probably not a horrible idea to come up with a code of conduct regardless whether there's COVID present or not. The running and other things are just plain safe.
Yeah, we do have, it's on the website somewhere, how we expect people to behave on Peach Mountain. But this, with the pandemic, we'd just be adding a few things.
Agreed.
Okay. Anybody have anything else?
Just one more self-promotion thing. At the start of before the meeting, they were talking about my birding and all that kind of stuff. I do have a lot of new pictures from Florida that I posted on Flickr. And if you want to look at them, go ahead. If not, you're not going to hurt my feelings. But it's just on flickr.com, FLICKR. And just do a people search for Doug Scoble. I'm the only Doug Scoble on there, and you'll see some of my latest, some pretty nice birds that I've not seen before and or not gotten good pictures of. So anyway, feel free not to as well.
Okay.
Were we doing anything for a Messier Marathon this year or not?
I could not hear.
Messier Marathon. Did that thing quit?
Is it on?
I don't know, I can't tell. You heard my question.
Yeah. Don's asking about Messier Marathon, if we've had any discussion of a Messier Marathon. Actually, if we were going to do that, wouldn't that have to happen within the next couple of weeks?
Yeah.
We're in.
The first Saturday in April is the date.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I was thinking it was sooner than that. Okay, sounds like a good email discussion then, so.
Good point.
Well, if anybody doesn't have anything else, do I hear a motion to adjourn? Support?
So moved.
Is anybody opposed? Oh, I don't get to do this as often as I do. Thanks, everybody. And
So long.
this next month, hopefully we'll be back here again, and our guest speaker will once again be Adrian Bradley. Thank you. Good night, everybody.